Hi everybody, in this video we're going to talk about sentences and sentence fragments, what they are and how to distinguish a sentence fragment from a sentence so that you get the answer when it comes up on the exam correct. First thing you must know is that all sentences absolutely must have a subject and they absolutely must have a verb. In other words, there needs to be someone or something that's doing something else. If this is absent, if you do not have a subject and you do not have a verb, then the sentence is not a sentence, but it's rather a sentence fragment. Okay. Be very careful. A sentence cannot have a gerund as a verb because a gerund is not a verb. Now, in the error identification collection of videos, I've already told you what a gerund is, and a gerund is simply a verb that ends in ing, but it's no longer a verb, it's actually a noun. Gerunds are not verbs. If we look at the sentence over here, it says Einstein being one of the most important scientists of the 20th century. Now, is that a sentence? Well, you can more or less sort of guess what it's trying to communicate, but it's not a sentence the way it's written, because we have the word being here. Now, being, as it's used in this sentence, is not a verb, it's a gerund. How do we correct it? Correct it by saying the following. Einstein was one of the most important scientists of the 20th century. In this sentence, we have a very clear doer, and we have a very clear action word. Einstein was. So remember, sentences need a doer and something to be done, subject and a verb. For some other sentences, you're going to have to check out the non-essential clause and ask yourself if the subject corresponds to a verb. Now, the non-essential clause is going to be a clause or a collection of words, could be a sentence, that can be removed from the original sentence without changing the meaning of the original sentence. Now, typically, non-essential clauses are found in between commas. So if we have a comma right here, if we had another comma after this entire thing over here, then this thing in between the commas would be a non-essential clause because we could remove it out and the sentence would still make sense. So whenever you're going to ask yourself if it's a sentence or a sentence fragment, in order to try to fix the sentence, always make sure that you check the part in between the commas. So Einstein, who was one of the most important scientists of the 20th century, well, what about Einstein? That sentence fragment over there does not tell us anything. That non-essential clause is not complete. Sometimes the sentence fragment is going to be much more complicated because it's going to have a lot more words and a lot more parts, and this is all meant to confuse you. So watch out for longer sentence fragments that give the illusion of being right. Just because you have a lot of words together doesn't mean that it's right. Einstein, who was one of the most important scientists of the 20th century and who made many discoveries in physics. Is that a sentence? It's sure telling you something. I mean, it's telling you a lot of information. Einstein was one of the most important scientists of the 20th century and he made many discoveries in physics. But is the way that this sentence right here written an actual grammatically correct sentence? No, it's not, because we have a non-essential clause, which can be found in between comma here. The non-essential clause starts with the word who over here, and ends with the word century over here. And even though we have this complicated collection of words, it's not a sentence, because it lacks a subject and it lacks a verb. It has a subject, Einstein, but it lacks a verb. So how do we correct it? We say this. Einstein, who was one of the most important scientists of the 20th century, made many discoveries in physics. Einstein was, and the rest of it still makes sense. So remember, just because a collection of words may be large, there may be a lot of parts in there, it doesn't mean that it's a sentence. Always look for a subject and a verb. The subject and the verb is there, and you have a sentence. And if you're missing a subject and a verb, then you have a sentence fragment. Now, this sentence over here, Einstein, who was one of the most important scientists of the 20th century and who made many discoveries in physics, we can correct it as it's written over here. Einstein, who was one of the most important scientists of the 20th century and who made many discoveries in physics, is something else that we could say. And remember, a sentence does not have to make sense or seem logical. It just needs a subject and a verb. So that's all you need to know about sentences and sentence fragments. And remember, while we're talking and while you're watching all these videos, go back to the writing exams of the blue book that we talked about and do some practice questions. Always, always practice. You watch a video, you practice. You practice, then you watch a video. That's all for now, and I'll see you in the next one.